Pardesi Beats.
Welcome everyone to another week of Pardesi Beats Unplugged. This week we're going to be talking about the European Super League and a little bit of hockey discussion. I am Khushwant Singh and I will be kind of facilitating today's conversation. I have with me Patwant Singh, Dhadwal, and Simran Kharal. So they're all going to give you a little wave there. And gentlemen, we have a very, very interesting couple of days really of news. News kind of broke on Sunday. And as you can see by me being in Anfield right now in Liverpool, I'm there live. This is a live.
I'm sure you are. Looks like Anfield.
All the fans were,
because you know it's
outside, right?
April,
so
and that sunny weather there looks more like a May or June weather there. But I'm just seeing.
Well, I mean, how did this get up there? If you know what I mean.
Sponsorship dollars.
This is very time sensitive. So
sending one of our guys
I'm
to
there right now.
Broadcast live from.
Yeah, they paid a lot of money for me to be here. Our sponsors. So thank you to all our sponsors for, supporting me and the show, and for Liverpool FC. But not really, because the owners have shown a different side that we don't like, which we're gonna get into. So as you guys know, there's a lot of news about this. European Super League, or Super League for short. And I'm just going to give a little bit of a rundown of what this is. If you guys
just before you continue, they also used to call it the abbreviation is ESL. So the ESL.
Oh no!
Yes, that is the abbreviation.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Anyways, continue.
That's unfortunate.
Speaking of that, there's so many abbreviations for like governing bodies in European soccer. It's so ridiculous. I learned that over these last 2 days.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, trying to read about this has been like a
UEFA, FIFA, EFA. Oh man, it's
been an exercise in like.
What happened
acronyms.
with this Super League? Like,
yeah, it has been. Okay, so what it is essentially, if you guys already know about football, each kind of like country, so like UK, Spain, Germany, they all have their own leagues, which the elite teams or cities have teams, and then they compete to win their domestic leagues cups, right? Or titles rather. And then the best kind of the best from all of those leagues meet up in what's called the Champions League, right? And then whoever wins that is regarded generally as the best team in football for that year. So what this Super League is essentially is the top, really not even best teams in terms of quality, but maybe more so the grossing, the biggest financial, the richest teams, most popular. There's 12 of them that originally are called the founding clubs. So there were 6 teams from the English Premier League, 3 from Serie A, which is the Italian league, and 3 from La Liga, right? So the Spanish league.
Yeah.
And these will I can read the team names. So there's Tottenham, Arsenal, Man City, Man United, Liverpool, and then who was the other one? Chelsea. And then we had Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus from Serie A. And then for La Liga, we had Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Atletico Madrid. So like all these teams are like
all the big boys.
Exactly. And then so the idea behind the Super League was like there was going to be 15 founding members. So there was going to be 3 more. Most likely they were looking at the teams to go after was Dortmund and Bayern Munich from the Bundesliga. Yeah. And then Paris Saint-Germain from the French league. So like those are the other huge teams,
biggest teams.
And then the other 5 remaining spots, so there was going to be 20 teams in this proposed Super League, whereas going to be teams that kind of just earned their spot in. We don't really know how, that it never really went that far. And the idea is that these teams just had a league, and every year the 15 clubs remained there. So the 15 founding clubs, and then the 5 would kind of transition and new ones would come. So essentially you can kind of like think of it as your best NHL clubs or your most grossing. So like Toronto, Rangers, Blackhawks, I think they're up there. Like, so teams like that, they're
pretty much your top Canadian teams and your, and then your like Northern original 6. American teams. Yeah.
Essentially, right? And they just play each other for the whole year, or
Jesus.
whatever the setup is. Like it's a tournament style, but they just play each other, and there's no other competition, right? Like you don't have like your Arizona or Vegas, etc. Right?
So essentially, a team like Leicester City FC, who made it and won the league a
Yeah.
few seasons ago, they have no chance in this league.
Yeah,
essentially.
and I'm gonna get into that too, like in terms of like an impact. So that was kind of the concept. It's like the big boy clubs joining together to make their own league, and
It's the Avengers of soccer.
Yes, except
If the Avengers were like
Greedy.
the worst, dumbest, greediest people.
Yeah, the greediest millionaires, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
pretty much, because no one saw these. The reception of this idea proposal was not like hey, I like this in Avengers, which you would
A
probably
true
cheer
comic
for.
book nerd would know that one of the Avengers was like that for a moment. Tony Stark.
Yeah, well, we're not getting anyways. So and so like we go to the question like who was running the league, right? So the league was essentially like the chairman was the Juventus chairman. I don't remember.
Not
his
Chairman
name.
Mao.
No, not chairman.
Thanks for
Mao.
that clarification, Pat.
Just
We're all very confused.
just in case, because he's a very popular chairman.
Anyway, yeah. Anyway, so the Juventus, I don't know if he's a CEO or chairman. Anyways, he was kind of the president for this whole ESL, European Super League, and so it's all essentially all the teams, like they're like higher up executives. They're the ones who were also in charge of the Super League.
Mhm.
And what we've kind of seen is that they wanted to schedule games during Champion League game slots during the weekdays. So that is always a traditional Champion League spot until you get to the final matchup.
Yeah.
So they were trying to steal their TV money too.
That is implied essentially. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna get into these implications and stuff, but you can like essentially think of it as that. And there's like some political moves too, which I think like we'll dive into that. We'll see kind of like what we think is happening, or what they were trying to do. And then so like in terms of money, JP Morgan was willing to back the Super League and all the teams that were joining up to 3.5 billion euros for the startup costs. And then after that, there was more planned as well going on. I don't remember the exact figure off the top of my head. So there's a lot of money that was kind of being thrown out there in this proposal, which is why you probably see all these clubs being like, yeah, sign me up, right? I want to be part of Super League.
But here's the thing. Can I interject for a second?
Sure.
It wasn't the general club who was like, sign me up. It was the higher ups in the club, beyond the manager, not like the manager / coach. It was higher, like the executives and stuff.
Exactly. So exactly what I was leading into right now, because one of the things was, so the financial aspect you can see, and then there's a lot of impact on the sport, which we'll dive into and how we feel that. But the league, in terms of its support and through the due diligence, kind of seeing like surveys, right, getting feedback from people, none of that happened outside of the head executives of these clubs. Managers didn't know, players didn't know, fans definitely didn't know, media didn't know. It was very closed door meetings that kind of facilitated this all.
That's really important considering the grassroots origins of many of these clubs, especially when you look at the English Premier League clubs. Manchester United, like Manchester was like textile workers largely,
railway workers who started
railway workers,
but
going back like 100 150 years, these clubs have had a very storied history throughout much of Europe. Like football, soccer was like your everyman sport.
Yeah, it was the people's game. Literally,
it was the people's game. You had people played cricket, but that was like for like the posh toffs, right?
Posh rich people.
Yeah. And then you had like, I don't know, like golf, but like that really wasn't that common.
Same idea.
Same idea.
Oh, okay. Looks like we may have lost Simran from
the golf gods have frozen Simran.
Yeah. So the posh people in UK picked up our call and they're like, "Oh, we gotta DDoS this guy. Get him out of the call. He can't be talking bad about cricket."
But at the end of the day, what I think the point he's trying to make is like, you know, there was all these rich, exclusive, executive type of leagues and sports that people were able to partake in. But what happened was the common people, the industrial workers, the blue collar people, so to speak, they sort of banded together, like, you know, after work. And a lot of this was from their work. Like a lot of people that had a union at work, the employees would form a team. So for example, I can speak on Man United because they're probably my favorite sports team ever. But they were originally a bunch of railway workers in Manchester United who formed and a team called Newton Heath, right? So that team led to further developments, and then eventually, because that's why the word United is so illustrious in their title, Manchester United Football Club, which was once a different name. Yeah. So you have to see these different things and sort of wonder from there.
Yeah, and that's like a lot of what, in terms of feedback that was coming through from fans.
It was the fans' game. Yeah.
And coaches and managers who were drawing a lot of, you know, the origin stories of like what this was and spirit of competition, you know, what the game really represents, right? And then so before we kind of go into that, I mean, yeah, let's just actually just go into that, because really there's like, we saw layers of difference from all different levels, like the governing bodies, coaches, players, the government itself.
Yeah.
Like Boris Johnson is saying like this idea is really, really bad and not productive for football in general, right? And when, like, you know, Boris Johnson, not the greatest track record.
I mean, he's a little goblin in a blonde wig, but yeah, go off.
Exactly. So like, but even he's saying, you know, something that resonates, that like most of the very, very strong majority of people are saying, right? So like, if he can agree on that, you know that something may have been really bad on the end of like these founding clubs for the Super League. So yeah, so let's dive a little bit more into that idea of how what this really represented, this move, what the kind of the motives behind it were. And I guess like, so maybe we can start with finances, right? So Patwant, like, you've been following soccer for a long time, you know these big team names and everything, and you know there's a lot of money that flows through them. So in your expertise of seeing how these Premier Leagues and La Ligas, all that kind of work, where do lesser clubs, so not as popular clubs, how would this, you feel like, impact them if the Super League came through?
It would be quite detrimental for these not so rich or financially, I guess you can say, equipped teams. For example, you can see right now I'm wearing my Manchester United jersey. If you're watching us, you'll see there's two sponsors right now on my jersey. Okay, one is the maker of the kit or the shirt or the jersey, which is Nike. This is an old retro one. Right now in current time it's Adidas. But yeah, so right now I got a Nike sponsorship. So they're sponsoring the jerseys. They make the jerseys. Second sponsorship on this era of jerseys. By the way, this is Ronaldo era. In that time, AIG Insurance Company. And they're still one of the sponsors at Manchester United, but they're not the main one now. So these guys are paying and funding for Manchester United to operate, let's say. Yeah. So that cost is not coming out of the organization or the football club in itself. They're getting the money from these sponsors. Why are these people, especially at this time of this jersey that I'm wearing, why are these guys paying Manchester United to put their logos and their names on all of Manchester United's, I guess you can say, marketing material, or all their sort of everything, website, their documents, whatever? Because Manchester United has won the most silverware trophies in the English Premier League. So they're a very popular and well-known club. And more so than that, they're in the top, I think, 3 or 4 at this moment, richest clubs in the world, because they've won all these things. So over time, they've gained fans. Fans have bought their jerseys and, you know, bought tickets, season tickets. And so revenue has started. Now you get sponsorships. Okay. So sponsorships, they're paying Manchester United because they're so popular. Now, eventually what happens is these little clubs, you'll notice like Manchester United's current jersey. I don't know if you guys can see them on the back there, but the new sponsor is Chevy, which is changing next season, and Adidas. So you can have the richest companies in the world, sort of, you can say, bidding to be your sponsor for your club, and they want to give you that money. But if you're not a popular team, and this is the original question, so I'm getting to it. I rambled a bit, but that's okay. Rambling's okay on a podcast. So the little teams, right? They don't
Glenn Anderson.
They don't have big name sponsors like this, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is these little teams who don't get the chance, they don't get the spotlight, they haven't won a lot, therefore they don't have a lot of revenue, they don't have a lot of big name players. They often have to fight their way up the ladder, up the league. And a team that's done it in recent history, primarily in England, so in British football, is Leicester City. And Leicester City, also known as the Foxes, they've come up, they were relegated. They came up from the bottom league or the secondary league onto the regular high tier Premier League, and they worked their way up and they won the league with the help of their star player, Jamie Vardy, a few seasons ago. So if you have a Super League who is technically the big boys club, invitation only, you can argue that's kind of how the mob worked back in the day. Just saying. You're not going to let these guys in, right? Like they don't have that money. So why would they be a part of your Super League, let's say? So now the attention for the worldwide fans, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be real with you guys. If the Super League happened, as a fan, I still wouldn't like it, but I'd still watch I can't not watch Manchester United anymore because I can't. Like, it's in my blood now. Like, it's almost like part of
it's
my
like the same
identity.
thing for us. Like when we watch the Oilers, but we've suffered, right?
We've suffered watching the Oilers, but
Oh
the
my
thing is,
God.
like, I can't not.
It's a brand loyalty to a sense because you love that club so much.
But a lot
And
of my loyalty specifically, and a lot of the fans echoed this, is the history of the club is so humble, and you know what they went through to get there. And I'm talking just the Sir Alex Ferguson years, right? The 90s and 2000s and onwards. What they went through and what they did in that time, and it's primarily because of Sir Alex, in my opinion, and some of the players that he attracted. But the point is that if he didn't have the money to buy somebody like Cantona or Ronaldo or whoever, he maybe wouldn't have been able to fill those little spots that he did, right? Now, having that money allowed him to do that, which allowed him to win more championships and therefore become more popular. Manchester United, as well as some other teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, etc., Man City right now, are globally popular. You go to any country and they have a huge following. India, Mumbai, there's a huge Manchester United fan club group there. China has huge Manchester United fans all over it. There's all these places that you can see the clubs touring. Now, it's not just Man United. I'm speaking on them because I know them, right? So back to the teams that it's going to affect. So these guys are the big boys club. They've made their own league, right? And all the attention is going to be taken now off the Premier League, off of Champions League even, and Europa League is going to be a joke. Okay, so right now Europa League's like, hey, I'll still watch that. There's still good teams in there, right? It's still exciting competition, but nobody's going to watch that. Nobody's going to watch Champions League. This current state of football from those original grassroots is going to be wiped out.
It's kind of like also like when you're talking about that, it's like, you keep casual fans a lot and like they become like fans just of those teams, right? Because like, how do you grow a fan base for somebody like Leicester or like West Ham? Like, look at West Ham, how they're doing this year, right?
Exactly.
So like those teams like kind of get left in the dust because that spotlight doesn't get shined on them, right?
West Ham is a great example. Okay, so I don't hate West Ham. Our family that's in London, like one of my family members, so my niece, shout out to her if she's watching.
This is an aggressively Pardesi episode of Pardesi.
It is, but whatever. So she lives in that West Ham area. When we visited, I remember watching. There's people, because I haven't experienced London too much in my early or later years as an adult, but Nottingham and stuff, that's another story. So Leicester, they won the league. Now West Ham, maybe not this season, but they came from usually being in the bottom of the top 10. up to being like up in Champions League contention, right? So these guys have fought their way through talent, through working hard, and next season, they're going to potentially be in the Champions League, right? As it stands right now, or even Europa League, if not. And these two leagues, they've never been in before. I won't say they've never been in, but you don't usually see them in that league.
Yeah,
and
West Ham is like your household name, right?
I'm gonna jump in and kind of give that North American flavor, like Simran just alluded to. This is a very, very Pardesi episode. So for those listeners that have listened to Pardesi Beats before, know that I know absolutely nothing about soccer and football. I'm the most casual of casual fans. That's why I haven't really said anything. But I think the point that Patwant was making was these elite clubs became elite because they could afford it. They were able to pay these superstar players like Beckham back in the day and get that prestige. And now they've become such elite clubs.
Yep.
In the NHL, in the NBA, in North American sports, we have that salary cap. Yep. So every team has the ability to spend to that certain limit. So we saw back when there was no salary cap, teams like Colorado, teams like Detroit, they were the top teams because they were paying the most for the best players. And that's kind of that similar vibe that I'm getting from like the top clubs. But then you have the underdog teams like we talked about with Leicester and West Ham.
Here's the thing with the difference between NHL, for example, and I'm speaking specifically of the British side of it, so the English Premier League. However, it is all around like this in Europe. So what I'm trying to say is there's youth academies, there's U20, under 21s, under 18s, the little kid leagues, but it's an academy of Manchester United. So you mentioned Beckham. Beckham was bought by Real Madrid from Man United, but Manchester United had him since he was a little kid, coming through their system. So a lot of players that are in a lot of these teams are system players. So the Sir Alex era of Manchester United he brought all these youth players in, and they're like, this guy's not going to do anything with these guys. And then he bought 2 or 3 key players to support them. And so these were kids. Marcus Rashford right now is a very well-known English footballer. He does a lot of humanitarian work and feeds underprivileged children. But he's a kid who was arguably going through hard times in Manchester. He was talented in soccer and football, and they put him into the system. He was a youth kid. He played all the way from being a little kid, a kid growing and raised in Manchester, up, and he's one of the top strikers on Man United right now, and on England on the England team as well. So this guy would never have gotten a chance if this sort of grassroots structure was not there. So if these guys are Super League teams now, what's gonna make them want to get Marcus Rashford or somebody like that? Even Jesse Lingard, who's been helping.
Like when you say that, like how are these other teams going to create that infrastructure for themselves to be like, hey, how do we build these guys in the future for us?
Essentially what this could do, just speaking of this right now, I'm realizing this as we speak, it's going to turn these regular leagues like La Liga, Serie A, and all these leagues, it's going to turn them into like, I guess you can say a lower tier league that's going to feed.
Feeder leagues, essentially.
Feeder leagues.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Pre-cap era, and I think Malik, you alluded to this, pre-cap era, the NHL was like this as well, where you had have teams and have not teams, ownerships that weren't willing to spend to a certain competitive level, and then you had teams like Detroit and the Rangers that would buy up any talent available. Yeah, they would just buy. Literally, I think Detroit's cap roll back in the 90s was like $90 million or something like that. At a time where the rest of the league was barely scraping to spend like 40 some mil.
And now
they were spending 90 mil.
Yeah, with teams now, it's like, oh, we drafted and developed this player. We need to get him on his entry-level contract and then get that supporting player with him. So that's similar to what the system in England is. It's like you have those grassroots players that you built, that you developed. Yeah. And if that goes away, that kind of destroys that pyramid system that has been.
I guess the only real advantage for these teams is if these larger clubs, these larger Super League clubs, they choose not to focus on developing and they focus on bringing in like sort of like mercenary talent.
That's what it's going to be.
That's a common thing
economic level, and then you're basically waiting for and that's basically what they're doing right now. And then you wait for these you wait for these young teams or these smaller market teams to basically discover and develop your talent, and then you buy that talent from them, and then that way they're still economically viable.
And then they're still
down. Price for but they're still down. Yeah, they're never going to accumulate enough talent.
So Simran, let's say
it's not that talent that's making them the money more. That's how the system already is actually.
And I'm gonna throw a number out.
But they all play in the same league, so that's the cool thing. So Simran,
so it's still okay because actually some of those teams are still getting revenue, right? From
I have a number. Whatever. So a number that's been thrown out with the Super League is that each team was going to take home 400 million for taking part in the league, just taking part in the league. So that puts them at a significant advantage to even prevent the lower teams, or say like the smaller teams, to even like they're just going to buy the players
to do something, because like the thought was they were going to revenue share as well with the other domestic leagues or whatever, but then the conversation becomes the higher guys keep getting higher. That gap is widespread, and then that system of buying out their players. So these players are going to go where the money is at the end of the day, right? Everyone
why would you want to play for West Ham?
Everyone dreams to go play like Real Madrid because you're going to get paid, and it's like a legendary city, right?
Well, hey, like you don't start playing thinking, it'd be nice if I could play, just Millwood soccer. That'd be good.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you
we all played it. We all played it.
Exactly. Like you wanted to play.
I make it big.
I still have my jersey.
Same. So like the interesting thing is like you can't blame the players for wanting to get paid. You can't blame the coaches, all this talent, from wanting to be at the top of their level.
At the end of the day,
the league functioning right now, I mean, it's functioning poorly. Can we admit that? It's not very equitably set up.
Yeah,
no, I won't.
Right? That's fair.
100%.
That's fair. But at least right now, those smaller teams, based on the schedule and the fact that they get to play these bigger clubs, they get TV, they get gate revenue from Manchester coming in. They get TV revenue. They get a little bit of ad revenue. There's opportunity for them to move up. So this eliminates all possibilities of those things, and it essentially relegates them.
Well, that's literally what it is.
Without their not for their performance, but for their economic circumstance. And where can we, if this league had come in 25, 30 years ago, I'm maybe even earlier, would Juventus not be a part of it? The way they were running the table back then, right?
They would have, and
now they're not. They're a have-not now, right?
They're still a have.
They were part of they were the main team.
But that's branding though, right? Like they've been a brand for so long.
Yeah.
You guys got to understand, like here's the thing. If Simran, you brought up a great point, right? So let's say you're Leeds United, which was Manchester United's one of their bigger rivals a few years back, right?
Example already.
Yeah. And so Leeds United, okay? So these guys and Man United have a history. So they're one of our arch enemies, just like Liverpool, but they're no longer relevant, right? Because they're not in the league. But let's say you're Leeds United and you have this history with this other club, because Manchester United's been around since, I think, 1870s. If, I don't remember the exact date, but I mean, it should. But these teams have been around forever. So Leeds United rolls up, and Manchester United is going to Leeds to play Leeds United. How many people are going to go and buy tickets to that game? Because first of all, their rivalry. Second of all, that's going to bring in revenue, as Simran said, into the Leeds United organization. Because Manchester United's coming. They're a huge team, not just a rival, right? So at the end of the day,
it's like the Toronto Maple Leafs roll into town, and
people they're sold out.
Rogers is packed. Everybody's making money.
Made a lot of money scalping tickets for his games when I was in university for Toronto. Yeah, 300% markup, 400% markup. Oh,
why not?
But let's get to the main point.
I think I want to transition to like the competition aspect, because the money's one thing. That,
let me just say one thing, okay?
Sure.
So the point that I was just about to finish, I know it was a very long.
Sorry, I stepped on it.
It was a tree. That's okay. It was many branches we went down, and we were almost at the twig. But the point that I'm trying to make is, as the league sits currently, even if Liverpool is the reigning champions and Man City and Man United are at the top right now, generally speaking, at the beginning of the season, a team that's the 20th in the league, which is the bottommost position, has a chance to win the title. Okay. And Leicester City winning a few seasons ago, that did a lot for their team. That did a lot for the revenue. That did a lot for just generally that team. And they've been up there recently because, they've got momentum under them. But if you look at the bottom leagues and teams that are relegated,
that shit.
Once upon a time, they were like big teams. Yeah. So Manchester United has been relegated before, and they've won their way up again. So these teams have been around since the 1800s. Manchester United was 1878, I believe. And, they started as unions, and it was just people who got together, and it was very grassroots. It was like railway clubs, and they played other railway, organizations and played them. And through the years with rivals like Liverpool, et cetera, even Liverpool, you can argue Liverpool and Manchester United are very parallel. That's why they have such a competition. They're such old school, cities. They've united the team. They've become a part of the culture and the history of the country, arguably. This would dismantle the whole thing. And these little guys, these little teams, they would have no drive. They would have no desire because they'd never get to this higher, Super League. So it's the destroyer of dreams. Fans would lose everything, and players are against it. But Cushy, go into the structure.
Well, that perfectly kind of like works into the competition angle, right? Because to me, the football and cricket as the other sport, I think they have the best seeding format in sports, in my opinion. So because in football you have your domestic leagues, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone plays in there. There's relegation, like in EPL. I don't think there's relegation in the other ones, but I'm not 100% sure. But anyways, so there's always opportunity, right? There's always opportunity. There's also always risk of you stumbling, and then maybe you come back, right? There's a lot of great stories there. Yeah. And then the best of those go on to the Champions League, right? Because that is like competition at its purest. You get the best from this region, and then they get together, and then you see the best, who's the best of that whole area, right? And cricket's like the similar thing on a national level, right? Everyone is playing. There's no internally, it's like your best of the best from that country gets together. There is politics, of course, and who gets selected, right? But either way, you're kind of putting the best you have versus the best the other country has. So you're getting kind of like the purest form of competition. There's obviously asterisks there in terms of like who gets selected, but at the end of the day, I think that format's like really, really good. And then so when you talk about competition, this opportunity that these other clubs get, that really gets overshadowed because Champions League is the thing that's getting dumped on the most here, right? Like the Super League was essentially shitting on that completely.
Yeah, trying to take the most proximal that will lose the most.
Yeah, it's starting to take its viewership. And those teams, because like what was happening now, let's get a little bit into the politics of the governing boards. UEFA, FIFA, they were essentially threatening bans to any players who would go play in this Super League, banning them from national play, for example, which if you're a soccer player, your dream is to play in the World Cup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like World Cup is your top of the top, or the Euro. Like there's nothing sweeter than,
because you're representing your country now, right? It's like a national.
It's another
what
other level.
What Canadian player doesn't want to go play in the Olympics for?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Like none of us really knew what soccer was unless like Olympics rolled around or World Cup, right?
I mean, that's like your first introduction. National stage. Yeah. Playing for your country, and let's like. It is in some cases a very deep extension of political divides. Like anytime.
Yeah.
You get like Greece and like another team from that area, Greece and Italy play or whatever. You get France and Italy, or
England
and Italy. You get Ireland, and
just look at the Olympics during World War II and Germany and Hitler's involvement. Those were like crazy. You were like fighting for your rights in the Olympics, essentially.
Was it
as German teams?
Was it the Bosnian team or something like that? And
and the Soviet teams and all those things.
Soviet teams, and you saw we had the Canada Cup.
Yeah,
right? Some really
versus Russia, and it was almost
basically
like
the Cold
versus,
the Cold War played on ice. Like we've
exactly.
all seen that.
Ideologies, right?
Yeah, and like so, there is that very animalistic political aspect to it, but it is what drives people.
Yeah,
and that for many of us, I know for myself included, that's what made me want to watch soccer as a kid. I couldn't bear to wake up, as early on a Saturday morning to turn on the game for a city I've never been to, and I can barely pronounce the name. Like, what is Leicester? I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, you
don't know.
Care.
Yeah,
I don't know. So I'm like,
exactly.
I don't know who these guys are. I don't know who these players are. But hey, that guy playing for that team, I recognize that. Oh, my pua sent me this jersey from England. Like, that's kind of cool. The girls at school, they like it when I wear these jerseys because they kind of like fit it. They make me look kind of sexy. It says nice. Beckham, and he has like a really kind of like hot wife, and so like, and the girls really like David Beckham.
He's such
so,
a pretty guy.
Maybe I'm gonna be like David Beckham. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's ways for a kid growing up in Canada to like really get involved in soccer, and the World Cup was one of them. And you can see the importance, the intense value of.
And there's been a lot of guys in Edmonton, Punjabi guys too, who have gone for Team Canada.
Like World Cups here and shit. Yeah, like even if you think on a competition level, like Malik, like you'll know, like a lot of this stuff, it's right now it's merit-based competition, right? Like when you talk about Leicester or you talk about West Ham season right now, these guys are busted their ass off, man. They've earned the spot, whereas in the Super League, you're just giving these guys the spot, and their team, their club might blow. Like Liverpool performance this year, they're competitive, but like they don't deserve a spot over some of these other teams who are just killing it. You know what I mean? Like if you have to earn that, and that really kills it, like in terms of competition level and fairness of the game, and just like sport as a whole in a general.
And the other thing is, one more point that fits in perfectly here is, in these leagues, regardless of rivalries, like okay, perfectly right now, at least on my screen, Kush, you're right beside me, and our teams hate each other, right? But that's when they're playing each other. There's a lot of unity between teams in, especially in the English football. For example, during World War II in the 40s, a bomb from the Luftwaffe, the Hitler Nazi Air Force, they bombed a lot of UK, primarily London, but a bomb was something that hit the Old Trafford Stadium in Manchester, and Manchester City let Man United play in their stadium. Okay, and then right now, like Liverpool and Man United, they hate each other, right? They're biggest rivals in the world. No fans like each other, but right now, because this happened, there's a lot of unity amongst these old school teams, because they're players, they're managers. Even Pep Guardiola the other day, he came out. He was the first manager that came out and said Super League sucks, and he's arguably, as a player and a coach, one of the most winningest ones
definitely one of the most modern, well-respected managers.
Exactly, like Barcelona.
Klopp also came out and said the same thing, right? The Super League is a terrible idea.
Klopp said it too, yeah.
Every essentially, there's not been one player,
there hasn't been
manager,
and I think the biggest point of that,
and then all the captains got together, started by the Liverpool captain, and then followed suit with, I'm giving props to Liverpool here. Think about that, right? That's how much unity there is for the game.
Oh, but there was also a lot of pressure from the fans, right? Like I think that's what helped a lot of the things. Like there was like the protest essentially. In Chelsea,
the fans didn't. Here's the point. That's the biggest point of why the current league is so important for the people. The fans were so instrumental in getting their British clubs removed from the Super League. The fans, then the players and coaches spoke up. Then the teams were like, okay, we'll pull out of this Super League. And then officials in the club started stepping down. Ed Woodward stepped down from his role of Manchester United. After the end of the season, he's done. and him and the owners were instrumental in the Super League. Think about that.
Yeah, you're already seeing people step down.
Yeah,
the biggest thing is it's that grassroots and that earning it, right? So with the Super League, there was that element of they're just going to be put into the team into the league, and then the 5 spots that were open for the other teams, there was really no discussion about how those teams would be involved. Are you paying to play? And that system already exists with the Champions League. And what the Super League was saying is this is kind of our way to cut our losses with what happened with the pandemic. But with Champions League, they also expanded to a few more clubs, which increases the number of matches, which increases the ability to get in, which increases earning that position and progressing your club further.
Yeah. So there is talk on changing the structure of the Champions League and Europa League.
It's already been done.
Yeah, it's already been done, but there's even future progression. There's still talk, so that the Super League is technically what the arguably good points that were from
they came up with after the backlash.
Well, actually,
but it would happen.
It is political too, in the sense because these guys who are in the Super League who want more money, this is also a pressure tactic to UEFA to be like, hey, get us more money somehow from the Champions League, right? So now this proposal that UEFA has made for the Champions League in terms of extending it to 36 teams rather, and minimal 10 games, there's more revenue coming in for a lot of these clubs, and that it was also one of their goals, right? So kind of like a pressure that the Super League members have put on Champions League. It's kind of paid off a bit, but we don't know when UEFA was already planning this. They've already been in the works.
It was in the talks. For sure.
So, but they put it out on Monday. The funny thing is, Super League was announced on Sunday. So there's little games. There's little games here as well. Yeah. Like we have to.
There's
know
a lot of politics behind the scenes for sure.
Right. But at the end of the day, right, the competition was I think was kind of getting shit on in terms of the genuine feeling of that. But anyway, so I'm just gonna kind of tell you guys about like what's happened now, and we're gonna move on to some hockey after that. So it looks like the Super League is definitely not happening because of all the pressure from all the different folks who is like coaches, players, especially players who went out and like protests, like fans who went out and protests, like
fans,
like such a distinct.
But a lot of players as well. They spoke out on.
Everyone has been like, "This is not a good idea." I honestly have not seen one person give a positive thing about this at any level. Especially a lot of ex club players, analysts and stuff too, right?
Yeah. From just the observed reaction on Twitter, it's basically like the most ill thought out scheme by a bunch of it's like rich idiots who got together and they're like, hey, how do we hoodwink like soccer across Europe? Like how do we let's heist this, guys.
Especially during a global pandemic.
I'm gonna tie a nice bow on this though. Even though everything with the Super League has been absolute garbage, it's flipped the soccer world upside down. It's kind of opened the eyes for UEFA to change that Champions League format to be a little bit more inclusive. For teams like Netherlands, from Belgium, from Poland, how can we get them also involved as well? So
that's a little bit of a loaded statement when you talk about UEFA as well, because let's be clear, let's be transparent. FIFA, UEFA, known to be very corrupt as well.
Yep. So I think that also gives them, although everything with the Super League has been terrible, those owners have been questionable.
Everybody's putting
that positive bow on it.
However, if FIFA or UEFA wants to sponsor this show, more than welcome.
Please contact us.
Send me a DM.
Yeah. So I don't know if essentially, so what's been coming out, all the English Premier League's teams, they've retracted their names from the Super League. They've bowed out.
Out of public shame.
And the La Liga teams.
It's all from pressure, right? None of these teams are literally what we're doing is wrong. Chelsea, I think, was I think Arsenal's the only team who actually issued an apology.
Their whole entire fan base attacked them so viciously, so horrendously, and then all of Soccerdom Let's
All of
be
the
real.
world essentially was
Just
shitting on them.
kicked the shit out of these guys, online so viciously that they were like, actually, maybe this is not such a good idea. Maybe you think, and even their players spoke out.
Oh yeah, and it's not
like,
even
hey,
it's not even like
it.
this is a good for the sport thing, right? It was
No,
just
no,
a
no, no.
move for it's like
It's a cash grab.
It's a it's a money
it's
thing.
a
It's a
blatant
greed
cash
thing.
grab.
Yes, and then
you can say what you want about these teams not getting treated. They're the upper echelon teams that said basically no. You can't play in our club. This is for us only. But
it's
hey,
it's an elite thing, right?
Everybody go ahead and start giving us money anyway.
Yeah,
because
hey, Barcelona's like, hey, we have to pay off that 600 million euros of Messi's contract. Oh, we didn't make enough money this past season because of COVID. Hey, why doesn't everyone off and just give us some more money here?
Yeah.
But anyway, so a lot of the teams have backed out.
Good for
officially them. Juventus didn't because
bunch of morons,
whatever, right? Because like for those teams, their money is less guaranteed since EPL is one of the only leagues that are still making revenue during COVID, like a strong number. So I can get maybe why like the non-EPL teams didn't want to. Either way, it still was a pretty scummy thing, and so the Juventus chairman, he pretty much came out and said like, yeah, I don't really think this is going to happen because so many teams have retracted their position on it, and they took away their founding member whatever status, and so this is like, it's pretty much over. But I don't think that the taste will leave the fans, players, coaches' mouth for a while, because this was really a really scummy thing to do in such a short time. And I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks. We can touch on them, and then let's talk.
Well, I'm just curious, like even if the majority of fans like boycotted these games, these companies are still making so much revenue from advertisements and I guess TV and stuff. Like those deals are already signed, right? That I don't know how it would be actionable for them for fans to actually make a difference. I think it was such a serious insult to the game that like that even players spoke out about it. I mean, players in the football world are much less reticent to like criticize teams and players. It's not the same culture as like hockey per se, right?
Not at all.
I think hockey is probably the outlier in this case, and as far as professional sports leagues goes for how boisterous their players are. But you look at how what avenues fans would have had besides just straight up boycotting the leagues and boycotting their favorite teams. It was pretty slim. I'm glad these teams came to their senses, but again, like I don't know if they wouldn't try something like this again with a little bit more thought out,
structure,
like a little bit more spin. You know what I mean? Like if they actually did this with some real social media, maybe like some actual marketing behind it to actually
maybe some planning,
change the flavor of it.
Yeah, like actually like getting some input and doing I keep forgetting what the name is, but like census essentially.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Then maybe they would have gone through with something like this, which would have been a serious loss for soccer. But I think we're looking at a near miss here more than anything, realistically, based on the number of teams that had signed up. They signed up and then they had to retract, which was kind of interesting.
I mean, it's really embarrassing on their end. Like this is just as like some of the hugest organizations.
Yeah, these are your golden boys.
Yeah.
Of how, not only how like soccer organizations are run, of how sports franchises on a whole are run.
Yeah,
like
let's be honest, these owners are like American though. Let's
they're some of the most lucrative organizations in the world as far as sports entertainment goes.
LeBron
and probably just in general as well.
And the LFC, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that one of the biggest criticisms is this sort of like xenophobic idea of to like flip the angle a little bit, is that like entities are buying these franchises not as their crown jewels and like, you know, something that they want to see succeed and flourish. They're buying them as business enterprises. And so you're seeing, you know, teams being bought by people, by other companies, to advance their portfolio.
Yeah.
And it's not so much as like, hey, there's a passion for the sport to see it grow. There's no local investment in the communities that these teams are in, and
it's
that's
just more
that's also
so
another loss of the fans, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's more so that just becomes like a formality, right? Those kind of things.
yeah, I mean, none of that is guaranteed, right? That you have a local ownership that's gonna be loyal to the local community. I mean, look at Daryl Cates, for instance.
Yeah, he wanted to hold this
like
ransom over us.
we could have a whole like series of episodes on the arena deal and all the sort of emotional extortion that went down there.
Well, that's you know, in Manchester United's case, that's the Glazer family are the owners, and they live in the States. Like a lot of fans echo the sentiment that these guys aren't even British football fans. They're not even here in England.
Yeah, exactly.
So like why are they running our thing?
Yeah,
right?
they're just like, let's be honest, they just want to make the buck, right?
The same kind of thing is applied to the Toronto Maple Leafs, in fact, for the longest time. To bring it back to the center of the universe, right? When you look at how what is it called? Bell and Rogers Media both own the Toronto Maple Leafs, and before that, I believe it was like the Ontario Teachers Association, like pension was like associated with ownership of the Toronto Maple Leafs, is massively profitable for them. But a lot of people make the argument that ownership of the Toronto Maple Leafs isn't motivated to make a winning team because
the revenue is so
based
good.
based on their investment, this return that they're getting is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah,
like they're like, as long as they're a consistent playoff team, well,
fan
revenue is going to be pretty
right?
consistent. Yeah, fan support is going to be great. Like you have a team that's just good enough to get in, or just good enough to be kind of successful year in year out. You're looking at a profitable franchise.
Yeah, and then one thing so we're gonna transition here, but one thing I forgot to mention, so I apologize, is that the Super League was proposing a women's league too, but there wasn't really any details on that, so I don't want to completely miss that. So like I said, I apologize for that, but there was no details, so we can't really go into what that would have been.
The funny thing is, a lot of the women's the clubs that are in England, like Manchester United women's. They didn't really say anything about it. They like sort of stayed out of that whole thing.
They probably did, but the thing is, like, I did make the media that, like, you know, I was consuming kind of maybe the top trending stuff. But yeah, anyway, so like transitioning now, we're gonna talk a little bit about hockey, but more in specifically, we're talking about Patrick Marleau, guys.
Holy Patrick Marleau.
Big milestone
Marleau.
for him.
Big Patty.
Yeah. So Patrick Marleau, as we know, has passed Gordie Howe for the most games played in all of the NHL of all time.
Yeah, fantastic career.
It was game number 1,767. Is that correct?
68.
68.
So 67 was Gordie Howe. 68
was the tying.
So he broke the record with 68.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot for us to kind of maybe just like chit chat about Patrick Marleau's kind of like impact on the game. I think the general question for us to really answer is like, do we think he's a Hall of Famer? And then maybe what some other fans have been saying, right? So like, Malik, I'll let you kind of delve in a little bit into this.
So I think the biggest thing with Patrick Marleau, so most regular season games played as well. So that's something to note, because the big Marc Messier stands will say that Messier has played more games. But if you look at all-time regular season games played, Patrick Marleau over his career has played the most games. He started playing at the age of 18, first game in 97. So he's been consistent, like ridiculously consistent. When you think of him, even when he played in Toronto, even when he played a few games in Pittsburgh, he was always that kind of player that he was never terrible, but he was never a superstar. Yeah. So even with that, Marleau did in the Olympics make a pretty significant impact in 2010 and 2014. 13 games played in total with 9 points over those 2 Olympics. So even though he's a depth player, he's always been very consistent. And I think playing that many games in this era of hockey is pretty significant. If you look at Gordie Howe, he did take some time off, played some games in the WHA. Another player we should mention also, Jaromir Jagr.
And didn't Gordie play till he was like quite old?
He also took a few.
I think Jagr's still playing somewhere.
Jagr plays in the European leagues.
And I think he like owns the team.
He owns the team as well, right? So in Czech.
Was it Kladno?
Yeah, it is, and he's still sniping though. Like he's still very like he's a good
he's
player.
still crushing it.
That's another player to think about. Like he went to the KHL for a few years.
He's one of my favorite players.
Yeah, the kind of career we were how should I say screwed out of by the league watching Jaromir Jagr. No, you look at the number of lockouts that man had to live through through the peak years of his career, and then even on the tail end, and then to choose to go to the KHL twice over the course of his career, or I won't say KHL, well, like Europe in the course of his career.
Yeah. He did play. He played quite a bit in Czech as well.
And the level at which he played for as long as he played was quite astounding as well. I mean, the time he spent in Boston and stuff he was still very commanding for the time he was. He probably lost a lot of foot speed, but he was still a useful player. Patty Marleau,
slow, but you couldn't knock him
you couldn't
over.
push him off the puck.
Yeah.
Patty Marleau, I think his useful years were probably left back in Toronto, maybe a first or second year in Toronto, and then after that, I think he's probably done. I mean, like he's a bottom of the lineup kind of guy, but regardless, just to be in the show, just to be there, especially on a team like San Jose, who's probably down and out. Like I don't even think they're sitting in a playoff spot right now. They're fairly well out of it, and they're going to be rebuilding for the next little while.
Yeah.
To see what that team, what that person has meant to that organization for that long, is pretty interesting. And like to see his career for as long as he's had it. Like think about this: the guy's had to evolve for like 3 different style changes in hockey. I mean, he came into the league when their clutch and grab was still very, very prevalent, and he went from that to the advent of the open ice. Sort of the freedom after 2004, and then how it's regressed a little bit again now with the impedance and penalties and things like that. Scoring is back down, but he's managed to find success and managed to remain in a relevant part of NHL lineups for the better part of almost 20 years.
Yeah,
something like that.
He became that depth player that every team wanted, right? Or arguably,
yeah, it's pretty interesting to see. And like he and that was all the way from being like a part of the core group in San Jose. Like he was something to be feared for a long time. I know Oilers fans were scared shitless of him on the power play for a long time. Back when San Jose was as strong as they were with Joe Thornton and Pavelski and Couture and all them.
I'm gonna throw a name out here for you. So he was drafted in '97, second overall. San Jose picked him. Other notable players in that draft drafted first overall was Joe Thornton. Other than that, looking at the rest of the list, there is not a player that is currently playing.
Well, the only guy I could think like that reminds me of him, like what for him his start time is Ryan Smith in terms of like level of kind of impact,
and
but
loyalty
like
as well, I think.
Loyalty to one team.
And like Smith played a lot less. Like Smith retired almost like 10 years ago, like 8 years now, right? But like Marleau's kept going. Maybe Smith started like two years before, but the point is like that.
Yeah, he's a '94 draft.
Like Smith wasn't the most impactful offensive player, but he was there in the moments you wanted him to be. And Marleau was doing that too for the Sharks mostly, being such a great complementary player to the other talent like Jumbo or Couture or Pavelski. and then in playoffs,
Jonathan
burying
Chichu.
some really important goals, like being a monster there, right?
See, they were both. You referenced
Jonathan
Smith.
Chichu and Devin Setaguchi say hi.
Oh,
You can't
dude.
forget those San Jose teams were deep.
Yeah, like the anomalies of Setaguchi.
Marleau was able to come into a game where they needed somebody. Like nobody was showing, and he would come in and just be that guy, right? Thornton
Yeah, you can argue he was like the number 2, maybe 3, right?
Well, like okay, well you look at the
and
comparables to guys that have been, like played the league in that long. The record was held by Gordie Howe, like Mr. Hockey. That's not a small feat. Well, like Gordie Howe at like 40 was pretty different than Gordie Howe at 50.
Of course,
right? He played
yeah.
the league till he was 50. I mean, so I don't know. The argument's been made that like, oh, you know, like Patrick Marleau isn't that kind of player and this and that. And sure, my guess is Gordie Howe is probably like a physical anomaly. Like he was just a freak. And anybody that's seen a picture
He was
of
a pretty
Gordie
big
Howe,
guy. Gordie Howe was a big
at that
guy
time,
for that era.
like he was probably like the genetic anomaly of an athlete. And he played in an era where, you know, off ice training and all that stuff didn't exist.
Yeah, game, right?
To do what Patrick Marleau has done in a league where everybody is the genetic anomaly.
Yeah, peak.
You know, where everybody,
right?
everybody's got the peak physical structure. I mean, we talk about Chris Chelios and stuff like that. Chris Chelios was skating around on that Detroit team. He was a waste of skin at the end. They want to talk about his he dragged his bike into the sauna and this and that. He was not a good hockey player in his last like 5 years in the league. He was getting walked by like Oilers third liners in that 2006 playoff run. Even Steve Yzerman got his jock absolutely ripped apart by Ales Hemsky in that goal that ended the series.
But with Marleau, like we've never seen that. Like he has played that high level or that decent level with whatever team he's with, even with in Toronto. You saw the Marner and Matthews also put out messages. Like he made a huge impact on them.
Yeah. We also saw Jumbo's
hockey stick. But the interesting thing is, so although we talk about Marleau being so consistent, he's never been named a first or second All-Star. He's never finished top 10 voting in any major performance award. So
he was never named an All-Star.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
He was, but no.
I know there's a list there.
Like at the end of the season, All-Star.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, end season. I'll tell you something about those awards. He played in San Jose.
Jumbo Joe got the vote.
Yeah. Well, Jumbo might have gotten the vote, but that's because Jumbo makes the highlight reels and he played in Boston. So whoever was on the East Coast was keeping.
But also when Jumbo was in San Jose, right? Jumbo was more of the.
Sure, that's fine.
But Joe played better.
If Connor McDavid is getting votes, you know, like you could have argued that Leon Draisaitl wasn't.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's a very, very good comparison.
It was
you know what I mean? Like Taylor Hall was tearing the Western Conference apart on a last place team, and didn't get Hart nominations till he showed up in New Jersey, which was also a bottom of the barrel team that squeaked into the playoffs that year and got their doors blown off in the first round.
So the question is then, is Patrick Marleau a Hall of Famer?
No, and that's okay. And that's okay. He was a very, very good player.
Very good player.
But he wasn't anything like he wasn't even the best player on his team during that time.
No,
I don't even think at any given time he was the third best player on the team.
I disagree with that.
I'm gonna throw two names at you that are
maybe third,
that are
maybe
Hall
second,
of Famers.
maybe third.
Yeah.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
throwing two names at you that are Hall of Famers: Dave Andreychuk and Phil Housley. Both are Hall of Famers.
But
Phil Housley, Andreychuk has won Stanley Cup. No personal awards.
But his points are really, his offensive production was much more higher.
But who was he playing with?
Well,
Cavalier, St. Louis, Brad Richards in their peak.
But that's at the tail end of his career, right?
At the end of the day, there was a different era, right? Marleau's in today's era, and that's the difference.
Here's the thing.
Like, okay, go ahead.
No, well, and there's a lot of stupid criteria for who should be in the Hall and who isn't. The people picking players for the Hall probably shouldn't be picking players for the Hall, because for some reason the Hall of Fame has more to do with. Yeah, it has more to do with.
Why is McGillney not in the Hall of Fame? That's a whole nother conversation. But or Cujo.
Like there's so many like incredibly dominant players that didn't get their shot or have yet to get their shot in the Hall. Why did it take Eric Lindros this long? Why? Because he said, I'm not going to play in Quebec. I got news for you guys. Like if we were doing a draft today and Quebec was an organization the way it was today, and we had Twitter back then and all that, nobody would want to play for Quebec. Nobody would want to play for Quebec. You're telling me if Jack Eichel demands a trade tomorrow from Buffalo, that if he goes on the trajectory that he is with the kind of career and the kind of skill that he has, puts up the kind of points that he does year after year, that at the end of his career somebody will deny him the Hall because he demanded a trade from Buffalo? Are you kidding me?
Well, then that brings up Pronger, right? You think Pronger's not going to make it to the Hall of Fame, and he demanded a trade out of Edmonton, right? Like that's exactly my point. Like you can't deny a guy for being one of the most dominant players in the NHL during his career simply because of a perceived attitude slight. It's one thing. There's players that are at the top of the league that during their time that probably shouldn't have been invited into the Hall of Fame because they don't represent the best of what players could be as far as like to be honored for life in the Hall of Fame. The one that comes to mind for me is Bobby Hull, who beat the ever-loving shit out of all of his wives over and over again, and it was just public knowledge throughout the 50s and 60s, like throughout the era that he played, and it was common knowledge for all of his players. It was documented in the newspapers, and yet he's a great guy, great hockey guy, gets brought into the Hall, pictures taken, all that nonsense.
So you have issue with essentially the criteria of the Hall, right? Which is fine,
and the people picking Hall of Fame players.
Yeah,
right?
Fair enough, right? But go ahead.
The only reason why people are upset that Patrick Marleau is not in the Hall of Fame is because we let too many bums in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And I
don't know enough, I think, about for the Hockey Hall of Fame, I don't know all the picks or who doesn't deserve to be there. Right. And
that's fair.
Malik, I'll let you say what you want to say on that point, and then I'm gonna give my answer.
And I think we should put some merit on what Simran said. Yeah, points are great, but that level of consistency Marleau has played at for so long should play a significant role. If we were to go based on points alone, so Marleau currently all time is top 50. He's 50th right now, a few points behind Dino Ciccarelli. But players ahead of him that have produced more points that shouldn't necessarily be in the Hall of Fame. So you have Vincent Damphousse, not necessarily a Hall of Famer. Pierre Turgeon, not necessarily a Hall of Famer.
I think Pierre Turgeon is a Hall of Famer.
And here's one that should be a Hall of Famer but isn't, Mike Gartner.
Okay. Yeah, that's
right? So I agree with that one.
So that point criteria is great, but there's also the other aspect of, I think if you're looking at the hockey aspect of it, he's spanned over such a long time, but also the Olympics as well. You have to remember
I think
that.
it's your
impact
of
the game
in
general,
the NHL.
The impact of your game, the context of did your game, how did you impact the clutchness essentially?
Yeah, there's an NHL Hall of Fame, and then there's a Hockey Hall of Fame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is
my only gripe when I bring that up is if you're going to criticize players for their off ice behavior or things outside of their actual play on the ice.
Right.
That be consistent about it. Yeah. So if this one thing is okay and this other thing isn't,
if only life was consistent.
Yeah,
right?
but we know that because there's always more to it, right?
Here's the thing: you establish a panel with criteria, and you have people judging someone. That's literally what the Hall of Fame is. It's a board. They're judging your body of work, your career, and your life, and how you've lived, and how you've been as a player. And as a person, right? There's judgments, subtle judgments being made about you as a person when invited to the Hall of Fame. Based on any of those criteria, yeah, sure, Patrick Marleau should definitely make it. He's an incredible leader. The career that he's had, the kind of success he's fostered around him, make him deservable of being in the Hall of Fame. I think there's certainly an argument to be made based on skill alone, what he's been able to do on the ice. I don't think that he should be in the Hall. Yeah, like, and sure, maybe like the cup aspect comes into it, but we know that there's so much more involved with winning a cup than just being like an all-time great player. You know, like Alexander Ovechkin didn't win one till he was like what 36.
But Ovechkin's dominated the game in so many other ways.
Yeah, so but like that detractor would still
be a game changer.
Like, oh, he never won a cup. And for some of these old heads, like if they're gonna gripe about Lindros, then hey.
But then it becomes like how much of a you did without winning a cup, right? So like for me, winning a cup is kind of like a thing for me that is a check mark for when you're talking about Hall of Fame, right? It shows, you know, you've achieved the ultimate goal of that sport, which your team is trying to win the cup. And yeah, for sure, like Thornton's probably not going to win a cup. Or I should take that back. This year, maybe. But the thing is, like, when I look at his career, to me, he's nothing but Hall of Fame. But with Marleau, like, he's had some great years with the Sharks, some very clutch, consistent play. Maybe not consistent because sometimes his playoff performance wasn't there. But either way, to me, like, his body of work was very effective at a certain period of time. But it wasn't always kind of transcendent. And the fact that, like, you know, they had a lot of opportunities to win the cup. They really did. Like, those teams were good teams. So whatever the reason is, they couldn't get it done, right? But look, then usually there's a leap, like the players will push you kind of over that hump. Like, that's what competition is, right?
Was over his career, could you have even said that, you know, he was among like the top 5 best players in the league?
There was times
given
where
point in his league.
There was you could say like as a goal
5 in the league,
as a goal scorer, but not as a player. No,
maybe not as an overall player.
He's also never cracked 90 points in a season. So that's
like I mean, he literally any season in his career, I'd argue he's probably top 10, top 15.
He's like one of the greatest 1B or 1C kind of players.
Yeah, like what is the Hall of Fame?
Okay, so here's the question for you
guys. Like, is it a collection of like really?
I'm gonna play a little bit of.
No, it's like is it a collection of really really good players? Because we got like
So
that's like one of the most subjective questions.
Check out this question right here.
No. Hey,
I get what you're saying. 100%.
Should Doug Weight be in the Hall of Fame?
I have a better comparison for you.
Should
Shane
Bill?
Doan.
Yeah,
Shane Doan.
Should Shane Doan, Bill Guerin?
That's kind of that similar comparison, right?
Yeah, I know.
Won a Stanley Cup. Was with one team. Was very consistent for a long time.
Great.
Yeah, you can say Marleau's a face of the Sharks, right?
But I don't think Shane Doan is a Hall of Famer. So what?
Yeah.
Also, Shane Doan is probably one of the dirtiest hockey players that ever played in the game.
Yeah. So my answer.
You haven't played hockey against me yet, though. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, look at this. So Ray Bourque. If Ray Bourque doesn't win the cup with the Avalanche?
No, he makes it because of his body of work was so amazing. Anyways, it was so.
Here's another one. Here's a player who didn't win a Stanley Cup, but is is in the Hall of Fame. Joe McGinley.
Yeah, see, like that one's.
I could see it because here's the thing:
all those individual awards.
He made a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
Got all those individual awards. Probably was top 10 in the league in major categories.
Most of his
and then his body
scoring
of work,
ability.
Yeah, and then his body of work outside of the NHL in international play put him over the top. He arguably scored one of the greatest.
There's a hockey Hall of Fame
in Canadian hockey history. Or I'll say in Olympic history, right? In the last 40 years, has there been a more pivotal moment since like the 80s in international hockey?
That was
I should say international men's hockey.
Not to recent memory, of course, right?
Right. Not that we can think of.
And the thing with the Ginla is like his like
there's a little bit of age.
If you're looking at like, you know, Marleau's a goal scorer too, but Like Aginla was pretty much half and half, right? Like, half his assists, half of goals. So like he had more points in less games than Marleau too. So he already has.
And he had trash to play with.
Yeah, his teams were not exactly. I was gonna say that too. Like his teams weren't that.
Marty General. I mean,
like Marty has like a great there.
Christian Huselius.
Yeah.
He had Alex Tanguay.
Aginla was a crazy talent playing on a team that was barely good during his tenure. So like it's a different thing, right? So like,
and that's not to say like the Flames during that period were an incredibly dominant team. They were like top 2 in the division year after year. It was them and them, Avalanche and Vancouver for a long time.
But then how much? So and I think that Stanley Cup argument also plays in for that team, right? So whereas San Jose was never able to get over that hump in the playoffs.
Yeah, but the thing is, they had teams that could have won. You know what I mean?
Could have, but
like
they never.
Their talents.
But so if Marleau had
went to the finals,
if Marleau had a Stanley Cup or 2 with San Jose, would you say that he is a Hall of Famer or not?
I think in that case, they would
players have
him.
been inducted that have had his numbers because they've won Stanley Cup. So
I'll say this: he's not a Hall of Famer, and neither is Jonathan Toews.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyways,
put your comments below, guys.
I'd like to hear what
Toews won a bunch
of
cups. He was a second line center on like an amazing team. Like that.
I get what you're trying to say.
Like
I don't think he's. Like, do you guys think?
But leadership, guys. Jonathan Toews, greatest leader, 2-way defensive player of all time.
Intangibles. You know what? Intangibles.
The Vancouver Canucks have something to say about the Mark Messier Leadership Award. Right? You can only promise a guarantee a playoff victory so many times, and then you lose the next game and get kicked out of the playoffs.
So guys, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, inform me. I can't remember. Is Dave Semenko in the Hockey Hall of Fame?
No.
I don't believe he is.
Okay.
Probably in some like.
How many points has he had in certain years? Think about it.
He racked up. Well, who's that guy that played? Who's that guy who played so much with Sidney Crosby? Who won a cup with him? Then they put him on the Olympic team, and he was hot garbage, but they kept him on. Chris Kunitz.
Yeah.
Is Chris Kunitz a Hall of Fame hockey player?
He's a benefactor.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. And I don't think Patrick Marleau is that.
He's the Marc-Antoine Pouliot of the NHL.
Patrick Marleau is
I put him in the Hall of very, very, very great, but on that cusp. He's very close.
He's very good.
He's
very good. I would have loved to have Patrick Marleau as a.
We're gonna start the Hall of very, very, very great.
Very great.
3 very.
But what's your answer? I haven't heard. We didn't hear you.
You know what? I mean, again, you guys. It's one of those answers that's hard to pick a simple yes or no because of all the variables, right? And then you also got to look at eras. So if you look at Gordie Howe's era, which we've talked about, Gordie Howe was a sure-in for the Hockey Hall of Fame at that time. If Gordie Howe played how he did at that time today,
I had 40 goals at 40 years old.
Well, I'm not going into his end of his career. I'm talking about his like peak seasons, right?
No, I mean like even then he was amazing.
Well, Gordie Howe was amazing. We all know that. There's no doubt about that. But the point that I'm trying to make isn't that he wasn't amazing. The point that I'm trying to make is like, you got to look at who else is doing stuff around you. So right now in the league, there's like arguably 30 or 40 players who potentially at their young careers who might make it into the Hall of Fame. Might. Okay. But Marleau's, I think his tenure and his consistency, as well as us all knowing who he is, just those things would put him in in my opinion, a high position to get into the Hall of Fame. So I would say that I'm leaning more towards yes, he's in, than no, he's not. But at the same time, I can't say like, 100% he's in. I can say 92, 93% I would put him in. But it's my reasoning is that this guy was an impactful hockey player through his career. He gave his dedication from day one till day, whatever he goes until. He's never given up. I've heard, I mean, who knows the truth? We're not in those dressing rooms, but I heard he's a big dressing room guy, and he really kind of pumps the team up and encourages the youth. And we
saw that in Toronto for sure.
Yeah, right.
Everybody loved him.
So in those things, like you can't only measure impact as a number, like you got assists.
Consistency is a big thing. And I pulled up a list here. The most seasons played. And I think that's a big thing with consistency, right? So with Marleau.
Why am I going to ask you this question now, right? Why have coaches put him on the team? Why have GMs brought him to their teams? Why has he been allowed to play even though he's not necessarily a McDavid right now?
He's a good player. There's intangibles, but none of those things qualify you for the playoffs or for the Hall of Fame. So being frank, just because your guy is good in the room doesn't mean that you absolutely dominated the league and people were shitting in their pants.
So this brings up a really good point about the Hall of Fame.
Maybe they were thinking about playing your team. Well, that's the thing.
I'd say there's a flaw in the criteria. I would agree.
There's no measurable stick that you have to hit to kind of get in there, right?
And that's exactly it. They either flip flop between, this guy has had a great this guy's a great guy, he should make the Hall of Fame, versus this guy was a terrible guy and shouldn't make the Hall of Fame. This guy was a great player but never made the cup, never won a cup. This guy was a terrible player but won a cup. And they literally flip back on their own rules all the time. At the end of the day, it's basically a league. It's basically a club of these old men's favorite guys.
It sounds like European soccer all over again.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what it is. But hold on, Marleau.
Like baseball's Hall of Fame. Like when you get into Cooperstown and baseball, like you hit that certain batting average over your career, that many hits, that many RBIs, you're in.
Unless you're Barry Bonds.
Yeah, unless you have some kind of massive blemish on your record.
McGuire.
There's no doubt that Marleau is an amazing player, and he's been a really good player for a long season. Many long years, many seasons. There you go. And the other thing is, there's no doubt that he is very impactful for the youth. So in Punjabi and in Indian culture, Pakistani culture, we have something called an ustad, a teacher who teaches you and sort of paves a way of being for youth or people that are learning from him, pupils, right? Marleau would be that type of a player. Now, Marleau perhaps himself isn't the best, arguably like the most point-getting player in the world, but maybe he encouraged one of those players to be able to do that. We don't know these type of things. But the reason that he's been kept around for so many seasons and respected in all the organizations he's been in by all the different levels and ages of players would, for my view, give him more of a yes, he should be in than not. But again, the guy who's been consistent in his life, just doing everything in the sports world, just being a great player for many years, doesn't get that notification that like, oh, he's not a Ronaldo. I mean, he's not a Messi. He's not a Gretzky, right? So a lot of it seems like, if I had to pick one, I'd put him in based off of that.
I don't know. A lot of it just seems like, like
it's all subjective, right?
The hocus pocus.
It's all subjective at the end of the day. But like, if you look at some of the names from the last, let's just say last 5 years, Fedorov, Lidstrom, Pronger, St. Louis.
Where does he rank against those guys? The people that he played with.
Carbonneau, Zubov, Korea. To me, he's not on that echelon.
He's not on that echelon.
And if we're going to be consistent,
I would argue that Fedorov doesn't belong there either. I have a big
you'd be wrong.
What?
Yeah, you'd be wrong.
I'll tell you why.
McGillney should be there first.
Wrong.
Where's McGillney? Exactly.
100%.
You get what I'm saying?
Well, just because a guy that's in, or just because a guy that isn't in should be in, doesn't negate.
Exactly. That's the problem.
I just read off a bit of the players, right? I just read
Fedorov.
Like, when you hear those players' names, he's not at the same level. And if we're gonna look at the last 5 years, for example, like that, like the names I just read off to you, let's think a little bit about consistency.
Fedorov was murdering the Russian league before any of us even knew
Fedorov
who he was.
Was a game changer, dude.
He was unreal, and he was on a team that was like so
But my main point
stacked.
here is, where's McGillney and those type of players, right?
Sure. Yeah,
that's the flaw in the system.
I did that on
there's no doubt that there isn't an injustice occurring here.
I mean, there's politics in every sport, every league, where
100%.
somebody should be in that does get snubbed and all that stuff, right? That's inevitable. But like, I mean, Marleau's well respected. That wouldn't happen to him. Because we're looking at him in this scenario.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
my whole thing is like that narrative of that idea of like, there's all these other things why he should qualify for being a hockey player besides like how he plays on the ice or what he did on the ice, and not talking about what kind of person he is. It sounds a lot like that hocus pocus story of how they brought in Adam Oates for like 20 games one year, and that
and
magically turned.
He made our face-offs be the best of all time.
Best face-off team ever of all time.
No, there's
like
awards for that kind of
Todd
shit
Harvey.
too, right? There's like you can have like what's the community award and stuff.
Like give me what it was.
Anyways, there's like different awards for stuff too, but like, those things, great for your individual performance. But hockey is a sport, right? And if your performance and you didn't impact and win, to me that's important as well.
The reason why that I go back to this. The reason why that 06 team was great is because Chris Pronger played 36 minutes a night. They had the best penalty kill in the team. They had they acquired a goalie at the deadline.
Rafi Torres and
they were an above 50%. It has nothing to do with faceoffs. They were an above 50% Corsi 4 team the entire season, and they had awful goaltending.
That didn't exist in
the entire year.
We don't talk about stats.
It still did exist back then. They had
faceoffs did matter.
Well, they had shit awful goaltending the entire year. Their PDO was trash. And they came into the trade deadline and they picked up Rolson for a song.
Yep.
And they rode him to the playoffs until Mike Green.
Remember how he lost like 10, 11 games
blew
in
a tire and somebody had to push their own goal, push a defenseman.
Why are you bringing up old wounds, man?
All I'm saying is we need to suss out what actually happened from narrative, because there's a lot of there's a lot of flowery illustration around the facts. And you have to look at the facts. And the facts was, there's a reason why that team was good, and it wasn't goddamn Adam Oates teaching Jarrett Stoll how to win faceoffs.
Yeah, there's more to it. And then, so anyways,
more to it was Chris Pronger playing 36 minutes.
Chris Pronger, we all know, was the goal.
Dragging Jason Smith.
So anyways, that's aside the point. And I think that's it, guys. We are wrapping up for today. We had a pretty good discussion on ESL.
Don't even
Super League.
Steve Stales
and Patrick Marleau. And before Simran
derails us, I'm gonna again bring up the same thing that I brought up in our first episode. A draft like this would be really interesting because you have those players that are
one wonders. Maybe
one day we will,
right? Like, where's that one hit wonder fit in? And especially when you're deeper in a draft of all time players.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, we'll probably do that in a few episodes, but we'll keep that locked. But
so anyways, go ahead, Malik.
Shall we? I'll throw out the Pardesi Beats social media right now. So we have Pardesi_Beats on all social media right now. Follow us, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching this video, you already are subscribed. Like the video, share it with your friends. We are here every week.
Tell us how, if you don't agree with our takes and if we're dumb.
Write it down in the comments. We love.
I'm sure we're already having a lot of comments regarding the Marleau discussion, but definitely during the show, after the show, and before the next show, you guys can put your comments and give us your feedback. Also, give us maybe some ideas and what you think would be a good spin on something we've done.
What do you want Simran to complain about? Write it down in the comments.
I am revved right up.
So follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram at Dhadwal Music.
You can follow me at Prof _Bent PENT on Instagram, and on Twitter you can follow me at Chota Sher CHHOTASHER.
You can hit me up at Simran Kharal on Twitter, SIMRAN KHARAL, or Leon the Professional on Instagram. It's Leo the Professional with 2 F's and 2 S's. I know it's spelled wrong. Leave me alone. I'm a lot less angry on Instagram. I'm a lot more angry on Twitter.
On Twitter he's just as angry.
Yeah, so Instagram is all it's all another, man. It's all yeah.
And then put one thing on everything, man. Right there, you can probably see how it's written.
Patwant.
There.
All right. So
do some acrobatics.
We'll be back again next week. Be sure to subscribe to all of Pardesi Beats socials.
All of them. Otherwise.
And if the Glazer family wants to sponsor this show, yeah.